Hey, my name is Joe,
And I'm Mary Beth.
and this is the best of Gen X.
We are in our 40s.
And we're siblings,
We'll talk about adulting in a world so different from the one we grew up in,
so excuse us while we save a generation.
one episode at a time.
Let's go.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Mary Beth.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Better.
Better?
Man, I had a week.
Why are we better? That implies we were not well.
I was not well. I was in pretty bad shape. I started feeling really nauseous last Sunday. And I thought at first it was food poisoning. I developed more symptoms for the next 3 days, which we don't need to go into detail about. Let's just say I lost somewhere between 8 and 10 pounds. And I thought it was food poisoning. And then after 2 days, I thought maybe it's the stomach flu. After 3 days, I was not getting better. And Mom kind of insisted that she take me to the ER. And I ended up in a hospital bed, tied up to an IV, getting fluids and medication for what they said was, quote, a nasty UTI.
And wait, you did not enjoy this?
I didn't.
Okay.
You know, you would think one would.
So-
I could barely stand up. I was very confused. The nausea was overwhelming. I couldn't eat anything. I had maybe had in 3 days, I'd maybe had part of a sleeve of saltine crackers. And even that, I was just forcing myself to eat because I just could, it was just awful. And so one of the first things they did was test my urine, and that's what it was. And it makes me think of our last episode with Andy. And I talked about how at our age, I feel like when it comes to our health, we are playing catch up because we don't know about a lot of things that can happen or conditions until it's upon us, and we're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And this was one of those times because I've had a UTI maybe twice before as an adult, and the symptoms were for me very different. I had no suspicion whatsoever that it was a UTI, and had I suspected, I would not have waited so long. I waited too long. So I'm glad I ended up going with Mom and getting the medications that I needed and getting treated for dehydration. And I'll be talking to my doctor because the nurse practitioner there said, as women get older, women especially, as we age, UTIs can take on very different forms. And that's just something that can really, really, put you in a bad spot. And I felt like I was on the brink.
Wah, wah,
Yeah.
wah. Sorry you went through that.
Yeah, it was terrible. And
I don't want to lose 8 to 10 pounds that way.
not at all. And I was sickety sick. And I don't remember feeling that bad in a long, long time. I don't know that I've ever felt that terrible. So I'm on antibiotics and I'm feeling a lot better. I'm just pretty tired.
Good. On the up and up.
Yes.
I'm glad to hear. Yeah, so I had a little bit of the head and chest crud a week or so ago. I had to travel for work and caught myself with this scratchy, itchy throat, and that aggravates the heck out of me. And I waited a day too long to take something, but when I was out of town close to the hotel, I bought some Mucinex cold and flu, and that's just like, it's magic for me. So literally within 6 hours, I was feeling better, and I was still waking myself up coughing a little bit, but it wasn't as bad or as often, so I feel you there. But it wasn't, I didn't experience what you experienced, of course, but yeah, so I'm sorry to hear that. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've not been doing really a whole lot. Summer basketball league is finishing up for our high school team. It's been fun. We've got a couple new players, and it's been enjoyable, and we've done really well this summer.
Yay, sports ball.
Yay, sports ball. I know you love talking about that. But, yeah, I got to play in a tournament up in Indianapolis a couple days ago in front of some, college coaches. That was really cool. And then I got to play golf today, which I enjoy doing on Sundays. So, and I played pretty well. So, yeah.
And you played right in that window because we had some rain this morning.
Yeah, it was sprinkling when we left, stopped, and then by like the fourth hole, it kind of came raining a little bit harder, and it was annoying for about 10 minutes, and it stopped. And then I think we had like one light little drizzle after that, but that was it. So we got through it. We actually were going to pull the plug on it today, but we just decided at the last minute to go ahead and try it. We got through it, so.
Right on.
Yeah.
It's nice and muggy out.
It is very muggy, and as we know here in this region of the country, it is sticky. It feels like a sauna when you walk outside in the summer.
You can get swamp ass just by standing still.
Oh, my Lord. Swamp ass is the worst. Well, Mary Beth, you're right. So we're in the dead heat of summer, and there are all kinds of fun things to do. People go on vacations and enjoy refreshing dips in the swimming pool.
Yes.
I miss my pool. It's fair to say most summer fun is enjoyed outside, right?
Yeah.
However, sometimes we just need to escape the pressures and the responsibilities of our daily lives and immerse ourselves into action-packed adventures of fighting life on other planets, or getting into aerial dogfights with enemy MiGs, or maybe fighting crime against legendary comic book villains with purple suits and green hair.
Yes.
I am talking about summer blockbusters.
Oh, so fun.
So fun.
You know, there's a question floating around among movie buffs currently, and it's whether summer blockbusters, have they seen their day? Is it sort of a dying phenomenon? And we'll talk about that. But we first have to define the terms.
Yeah,
like, what is this? What's a summer blockbuster? Where did the phrase come from? Because just because a movie's released in the summer doesn't mean that it qualifies. So I consulted the interwebs, and I found some information about the actual term blockbuster being used in a movie context, and it surprised me because it's different from what I'd always heard. It goes further back, actually. So apparently it was applied to movies as way back as the 40s. Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically it was after what was called a blockbuster bomb, which, when you're in the World War I, World War II era, people knew what that meant. And so a blockbuster bomb is one that can just decimate a whole block full of buildings. Okay, so that's what the impact of a blockbuster bomb, they were applying metaphorically to films. So they'd release a movie and say it's action-packed thriller, blockbuster. And then later on, starting in the mid-'70s, the summer blockbuster era began. Now, the summer part of that is obvious, of course, because it's the season. So the blockbuster in this case was always described as those event-type films, what they call event films. Films that have people literally lining up around the block of the movie theater, trying to score tickets all over the country. That too can mean blockbuster. And so that's kind of where the term, began. But what qualifies as a summer blockbuster? Because I would argue that there's a specific formula. There are certain factors. Like, what would you imagine has to go into qualifying as a summer blockbuster?
Oh man, I wouldn't even know. You're gonna have to tell me. I don't know.
Okay. Well, you're looking at big production.
Okay, well, yeah, that to me that was obvious. I thought you were looking for like a specific
some
type of metric.
So it's not going to be a small artsy independent film, right? It's going to be backed by a big studio.
I was going to say big studio, so
high cost,
like a Paramount or someone like that.
Universal, Paramount,
a big budget. Okay,
big budget with expected big returns.
Okay, now
obviously
we're getting somewhere.
Usually there's action adventure. It's got to have some kind of mass appeal. And it can be family friendly. Mass appeal and family friendly aren't always synonymous, so it can be one or the other or both.
Right.
And then it's often coupled with, and here's another part of it, lots of merchandising and lots of marketing and buzz
yep.
and hype.
Yeah, because I think even that word buzz like started coming from
Yes.
when all these came about, and that's where you start hearing the theatrical buzz and the interest and
Yeah, because before, I mean, it didn't really begin until, I'll go ahead and say it, Jaws. Steven Spielberg's Jaws in 1975 began the era of the summer blockbuster. People were lining up around the block. It was the first time of a mass theatrical release like that. It was like 400 plus theaters across the United States. So it wasn't just available to more people, but it was available in more locations so people could see it over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those kind of movies. Also, it was the first time that a movie really marketed ahead of time with merchandise. Mm-hmm. Anything from lunch boxes to pencils to T-shirts, you name it, collectibles. So all of that together, by the time it was released it was June 20th, almost 49 years to the day. Today's the 23rd, so it was June 20th, 1975. Mm-hmm. Next year will be its 50th anniversary.
That's crazy.
Here's something fun. So we know that Josh and I have been dating 9 years as of May 31st. So 9 years ago was the 40th anniversary of the release of Jaws. Because it's one of my favorite movies, and because I had never seen it on the big screen, because I was not born yet, I had to go see it. It was in theaters. Sure. And so that was actually our first official date out. We had been dating for a few weeks. We just hadn't left the house.
So Jaws was your first date.
So Jaws was our first date, yeah, in the theater. And seeing it on the big screen is something special.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, you can actually go see Jaws on the big screen this coming weekend at our local theater.
Why is that? Just because of the anniversary or the June 20th or close to the June 20th date? Or?
No, I just believe that it's part of the their typical
like special
summer
edition?
Classic series.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So like Harry Potter is playing right now, I think, too.
No, you know what? You're right, because I've seen the local one here, not too far from our house, that had some type of special edition classic re-release of something, and I remember looking at it going, why is that?
Yeah, well, I sure hope that they do release it again in theaters.
Yeah, that's cool that they do that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
No, yeah, so when you first asked me that, I'm sitting here thinking of like, okay, she's talking about a specific metric or a specific definition of something, but everything you said just makes absolute sense. It's big production, it's the lead up to it, it's the buzz, it's the hype, it's the budget, it's
right
action, it's everything. You're 100% right.
And what's crazy when you think about the film that started it all, starting with Jaws, and then going, you kind of create a list in your head. Let's see, we're mid-40s, so we grew up, that's right in the Gen X sweet spot.
So many good ones.
Yeah, from 75 on. Because, we're talking about movies like several Star Wars movies were the blockbuster hit of the summer.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 at least.
There's E.T., Top Gun, several Batmans, 2 Jurassic Park movies.
Ghostbusters,
Beverly Hills Cop, Independence Day. And then with The Lion King began the Disney and Pixar and other animated movies. Toy Story's on there, on the list. Basically every Marvel movie.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it's a collection of movies that would be, I think, easily among our favorites growing 100%. Up. Some that we've even talked about before on the podcast.
Right.
Grease was one of them, actually.
Grease, yeah. And like you said, it's like, why would those stand the test of time and be some of our favorites? Is because it was just everything was built up to be so exciting. And gotta go see it. And there was just so much surrounding, excitement surrounding it. So, yeah, you just started looking forward to it. It's like, get the popcorn ready. Let's see what's coming out. Because you just couldn't wait to see what the next big one was.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember a summer blockbuster that I would have stood in line around a street corner for. And I can't.
I remember a couple myself. I'll let you.
You go ahead.
Yeah, so the first couple that I remember, this kind of seems silly, but like Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I remember that.
And I think that was June of 1988, so I would have been 8 years old.
I think we all went. I think that was a family night.
I was about 8 years old, or I was 8 years old, but I was only 8 for like a few months. And I remember I was so excited because even the previews, like, they were just, I don't know, it was just so iconic. It's like, They had this build up in the previews, and it was an animated rabbit, and then it had like actual humans.
Yeah, animated and live action
Right.
mix, which was new.
Exactly. So said better. So then they had the Jessica Rabbit character, and I'm like,
Am I supposed to be turned on?
yeah, I'm like, is she supposed to be hot? Or, is that okay if I say that? Or, so they made this like attractive, sort of like adult entertainer type,
Yeah.
cartoon character. But
I'm not bad.
right,
I'm
and she
just
had
drawn that way.
Yeah, she had that voice, and so there, that just grabbed. I think it was like you said, it was the mixture of the live action and the cartoon or the animation. So that just captivated me to no end. I was like, I could not wait to see that movie.
Yeah.
So I think I bugged mom and dad for a long time about that one. And the other one was, I think actually the very next year in June of '89, I could not wait for Batman. That was the Michael Keaton, the original 1989
I
Batman.
have to say, that one still, I believe,
It's so good.
is the best.
It's so good. Because, of course, you have Jack Nicholson, legend,
Right.
who plays Joker. And I think Michael Keaton was probably the best Batman, in my opinion. And maybe that's just me being a Gen
I do
Xer.
too. And
Maybe that's just me being a
if you size him up next to all the Batman since, he's, even in his heyday, Michael Keaton was no superhero.
No.
He was just like an average.
Yeah, like
Kind
a
of-
Billy Joel type looking dude,
I mean, much more attractive than Billy Joel, I would argue. But
Okay, I wasn't going there, but sure, we can go there if you want.
but I mean,
no,
he doesn't.
just kind of plain.
He doesn't have the physicality of a superhero.
And I think that was part of it. So like he had some earlier movies where he was just like an average Joe kind of character. And I remember thinking, even when I was 9 years old, learning that he was going to be Batman in that big epic movie, I was like, wait.
Mr. Mom?
I was like, that guy? And he kind of had the funky looking hair,
Yeah.
and I was just like, really? That guy? But then once I saw it, I mean, it was amazing.
But he puts the
Amazing.
mask on, and I have to say, when it comes to Michael Keaton, the Batman mask in particular, if he was going to play any superhero, that one accentuated his two best features: his beautiful, beautiful mouth and his beautiful, beautiful eyes.
Okay.
That's just me.
I will let you be the judge.
Other ladies my age listening, can I get a hell yeah?
And he also played in Jack Frost, which is the complete opposite. But anyway, no, I was so looking forward to that one. And you had Jack Nicholson, like I said, who was Joker, and I couldn't wait to see, because I had always seen like cartoon versions of Batman and Joker, and I couldn't wait to see it live, like with a live human playing Joker. It was really cool to me.
Oh, yeah.
And how they did his face, and the what do they call it? The not cosmetics, but what do they call it when you do the the makeup and you have to do like a big transformation? They call it something.
Prosthetics?
Whatever. Yeah. So that I thought they did that really well. And I just liked the sets and everything just looked so.
It was very noir,
Yeah, so cool.
very classic,
the Gotham City.
classic comic.
Yeah, exactly. The Gotham City set was dark.
Yeah.
And it
Dark
was
and
just-
seedy.
And the Batmobile was super cool. So yeah, I was really, really into that. And I think to your point earlier about the advertising, I vividly remember like McDonald's was just all over that movie. I think they had like souvenir cups that had the Batman logo on it, or maybe his face. And they were just constantly like just hitting you with it and just hitting you with it. So I was like, I gotta go to McDonald's and get whatever they're selling for this Batman movie. I was all about it. And I wasn't a big to be honest. I never got into Batman when I was a kid. Like the Adam West versions, the older versions in the '60s. I never got into.
And we weren't really into comics either.
Exactly. So I was never. I mean, I liked Superman, of course. I was big into that, but Batman just never really grabbed me like Superman did. So I just remember that 1989 summer. I could not wait to see Batman, and I think we've explained the Michael Keaton kind of angle. But once I saw that, I became more of a Batman fan, and so I was more apt to watch the others because of it. So
Right, same. And you mentioned Superman. Superman 2 is on that list as well.
my favorite.
My
favorite.
I,
Has to be the best one.
I'm speechless.
Yeah,
I mean,
4 was ridiculous. I shouldn't have ever made 4.
but 4 is fun to laugh at.
It's fun to laugh at, but the visual effects got worse somehow. Like
I
his
know.
flying looked faker. How
Right.
does that?
How does that happen?
But Superman 3 like scared me because he was fighting himself,
And he
like
was
the bad
mean.
version. So yeah, 2 was the best. Has to be the
2
best.
is awesome.
So I do remember those 2 summers for sure.
I remember actually going to see Ghost, and I remember
Oh, you were obsessed with that movie.
I remember not being able to wait, and our Aunt Gretchen used to take me out a lot. We've always been kind of kindred spirits, same type of interests.
Interests, yeah.
And so she would, when I was probably in middle school, she would just pick me up about once a month on a Saturday, take me to a movie, take me to lunch. We'd just have our little dates. And She told me, this one was for my birthday because it did come out in the summer. And she was like, well, give me a call. Let me know what you want to see. And I had just seen the previews for Ghost. So I called her back. I remember that phone conversation. I remember standing there having that conversation with her. And I said, I know what I want to see. I want to see Ghost. And she goes, oh, I just saw that. I'm going to see it again.
That's so funny.
She said it just like that.
The
I'll never forget it.
rewatch.
And
Yeah, you were obsessed with that, I remember, Ghost.
I mean, first of all,
And you had the Demi Moore hair.
I did.
You had the haircut from Ghost.
And hey, I rocked it.
Did you get it because of that? I
No.
felt like it was like the timing was perfect.
Mom talked me into that haircut because of Wilson Phillips.
Oh, okay.
Remember the lead?
I do.
She had the short hair.
Yeah, I do.
So it was inspired by that haircut.
Okay.
And I did look cute. I'm saying not everyone can rock short hair, but I can.
Yep.
Anyway, I really liked Ghost, and I think that it's interesting that Ghost would be on the list of top summer blockbusters for their particular year because do they check all the boxes? I mean, it's a thriller. There's action. It's not an adventure film by any stretch. It's more of a personal love story.
Yeah, it's sad.
It's sad, but it's got Whoopi Goldberg's character, which is hilarious. So there's a lot of comic relief. Mm-hmm. I think she even won an Oscar for that, did she not?
I
For
could
Best
see it if
Supporting
she did,
Actress?
'cause she was pretty good in
Yes.
it. And
So it's not your typical. I mean, when you put Ghost up against Independence Day and Star Wars and Avengers, it just kind of you're like, huh? Mm-hmm. But I think it goes back to the beginning of the era of the summer blockbuster with Jaws, where it's like there aren't a lot of bells and whistles. It's just a very character-rooted story. Mm-hmm. And so sad. And Demi Moore popularized that particular cry where her eyes would fill up with tears and then she'd have that one perfect tear roll down her cheek.
but her face wouldn't make any movement. It's just like just come down.
Yeah. And it was sort of, I mean, I didn't look this up, but I feel like that was a bit of a comeback movie for her. Not that she ever really went away, but she was part of the Brat Pack of the 80s, the St. Elmo's Fire. And
Yeah, you're probably right.
this was like, I want to say one of her first serious adult roles where she was taken more seriously as an actress. Because from there, her career really took off.
Yep.
And she got a lot of incredible roles and that sort of thing.
And of course, she at some point was with like the highest paid actor
Yeah,
in that era.
they were
Bruce
a walking
Willis.
enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, he was like the highest paid male actor at that time, or
Were they not?
close
They were
to
probably one of the first power couples. Now that I think about it,
Yeah, but I mean, you could just imagine being with somebody like Bruce Willis and Demi Moore. It's
I know.
like crazy.
but yeah,
Hollywood royalty.
But Ghost is one that I saw multiple times.
Yeah, that's a good call. Do you remember what? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Do you remember what year that was? That was like around 91 or 92, wasn't it? Or 90? No. So Batman was not 89. Ghost had to be like between 90 and 92.
I would have to say 90, 91,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay.
But that's my I want to include Titanic in this story. Shout out to my friend Andy. She had to endure me during this whole experience.
I remember those days. I mean, I think you went like 10 times. To watch
I
this
went to the
movie.
theater 7 times
Okay,
to
7.
see Titanic.
That's
13 times to see Romeo and Juliet.
Oh God. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. But I remember you were obsessed
This
with
is
that
why
too.
I should never drink.
Well,
I've got an addictive personality.
If anybody knows you well enough, they know you're a Leonardo DiCaprio
Always,
fanatic.
always and forever.
So I remember that.
Well, and not only that. Now, I'm bringing Titanic into the discussion, and I shouldn't. What kind of podcaster am I? Because it did not come out in summer. It came out in December. But it's one of my biggest, most epic, have to see it, can't wait. Waited months and months and months of anticipation to go see it. Just obsessed. But my first slumber party in 4th grade, I wanted to watch because it was like 86, 87. Mm-hmm. Titanic was discovered in 85 by Robert Ballard's team. So by 86, 87, National Geographic had a documentary on about, and I wanted to watch it. Mm-hmm. I wanted my friends to see how cool it was. For some reason, no one else at my slumber party wanted to watch it. They wanted to watch cooler movies.
Oh, what is wrong with them? They want to watch Grease, probably.
So I say that to let you know, I've been a lifelong fan of Titanic in
Just the
general.
story.
And then to find out that my favorite actor is going to be in a
Right.
movie about Titanic, I was just over the moon, obsessed.
Yeah, you liked it. I remember
And so
that.
that's one movie that I would have waited.
And it was like super long. What was it, like 3 hours, 4 hours? It seemed like it was like 4 hours.
It was, gosh,
It was
yeah,
long.
it was 3 something.
Yeah,
But they had to have a break. That's how long it was.
yeah.
Had to have a brief intermission. But I just remember going, because it was a special night, right? Andy and I went to Louisville to the nicer, bigger theaters because I wanted the experience to be perfect. It was like prom night. I was like building it up in my head just so I could be disappointed. We get there and it's sold out. But then there is like one showing left, and this is opening night, and I can't miss this movie, right? So we race from Louisville to Clarksville to the theaters at the River Falls Mall, and miraculously, they still have seats available. It was packed, it was full, but we got in. I cried so hard, Andy had to drive home. I was incapacitated.
Oh, my Lord.
I'm such
Andy
a
was
dork.
probably like, oh, my God.
Yeah, poor Andy. Like, she must have been why am I friends with this weirdo?
Yeah, that's so
I'm such a
funny.
dork.
That's very dorky.
But I treated that particular movie like the summer blockbuster of my life.
In December. That's so funny.
Well, do we think that it's dead? Is the summer blockbuster dead?
I feel like it's getting there.
If so, who
it's
killed
not.
it?
Well, I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier. It was like, family friendly seems to be a theme for some of those movies, and I don't feel like they're as family friendly now for the films that I think they're dedicating to be like a summer blockbuster. So,
True.
was Oppenheimer a summer release?
Barbie won out in terms of like gross earnings, but
Yeah.
but Oppenheimer was right up there.
Yeah,
so.
but so I think like that.
So they those two movies dominated the
Yeah,
summer.
so I think they started getting to more like we're going to put this movie out that requires a lot of intelligence. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like there's more of an intellectual kind of need for or requirement or whatever. So I think that, and I know you guys. I'm not into the Marvel stuff. I think you and Josh are. So I'm probably going to have to duck and cover when I say this, but I've never really been into those, and I feel like there's some Marvel fatigue.
That's a good call. That's interesting.
And then there's other stuff like the Mad Max, and I don't know if it's a sequel or a prequel, but there's a
Right.
Mad Max that's coming out, or maybe has come out, and it's just kind of a weird.
It looks weird.
Yeah, and then I think one of the Marvel things that Ryan Reynolds is in, there's apparently a lot of cocaine or
Deadpool.
Deadpool.
It's almost too. I saw the first one. It was great and it was funny and he was great. It was a new kind of superhero, right? And they break the fourth wall a lot. I couldn't take a part 2 or a part 3. Like one was enough. He's just a little too much. Deadpool is.
Yeah, so for whatever reason, I feel like they're getting away from that sort of.
Are they wearing out their welcome with audiences?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I never considered that. The Marvel fatigue. I like the way you phrase it because along with Star Wars, you'll see Marvel movies over and over again listed in the top summer blockbusters. And they're pretty strategic about it because there are so many characters in that universe. They pretty much dominate the whole year,
Right.
like any season.
Yeah.
But
Because anytime you guys have ever talked to Marvel about me and even our cousin, it's just like I can listen for like the first 30 seconds and I'm just like, it's just too complicated. Like I'm out.
yeah, well,
It's never gotten my attention.
I was never into it either, but Josh was so into it. I told him, okay, I'm going to try these out. But he had to actually write it out because there are different orders you can watch them in. Mm-hmm. And so he wrote out an order that he thought I should watch them in. So I watched them all. And by Infinity War, which is like the first installment of the quote unquote end, which is not really the end.
Right.
And I'm not even sure I fully understand that, but
And I won't remember this 30 minutes from now.
But in Infinity War, I'm sobbing out to the truck.
What is your deal?
Sobbing.
Woman, gather yourself.
Dude, Thanos killed everybody. Just with like the wave of his hand, one after the other, just death, death, death. All your favorite characters, and I'm going, no, not her, no, no.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm sobbing on the way to the truck, and I'm like, "What have you done to me, Joshua?" So they are pretty good, but yeah, that could be one factor. I have some theories myself.
Okay, but I just my point was I just feel like they're getting away from the
Yeah.
recipe of success, like what
Sure.
made the summer blockbusters so big.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the downsides of this whole phenomenon is that Jaws started something, and for many years, if you look at the list, climbing up year by year, for many years, the movies, even if they were like big budget action adventure, you still could hang on to very character driven storylines. However, it turned into one studio trying to outdo the next. Well, you jumped out of a burning building, our character's gonna jump out of 2 burning buildings. And just like summer after summer, it was just like, how can we top that? How can we top that? How can we top that? And it became topping it with more merchandise, more hype, and more CGI, and less quality.
Yeah.
So quality has very much taken a hit
Yeah.
because you're starting out with, stories that people really care about and characters that people really care about, and not so much anymore. So that's one, I guess, factor. I think part of it has to do, obviously, with the internet and streaming. Now, yeah, like Blockbuster movie rentals, where I used to work, by the way, one of the coolest jobs I've ever had.
You had the blue shirt and the khaki pants.
I did, and a belt. Thank you very much. And I have to say, it was such a fun job. It was like my first year of college. All of us were movie buffs. We got to rent as many movies for free as we wanted, anytime we wanted. It was just so much fun.
Yeah, I was kind of jealous.
Oh, it was so fun.
I was jealous of you at that time.
Such a good job.
Why didn't you just give me a job? I don't.
Well, then I started waiting tables because that's where the money is.
Right.
Well, anyway, but my point was renting movies wasn't enough to kind of give the movie theaters a hit, right? It's the internet and streaming that really did it. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it. I think that if you're going to call people out of their homes, you got to give them a real good reason. And I'm not sure that those reasons are happening so much anymore, because when you say to yourself, oh, I can just stream this, or I can wait till it, comes out. Because even like, I remember last summer, Mallory wanting to watch Barbie. She had already seen it twice at the theater, and she wanted to rent it before it was like widely available. It wasn't in theaters anymore, but it wasn't like released for streaming,
Right.
But you could rent it for like $20, which was pretty expensive, or $25. You could rent it on one of those, Prime videos or something. So some people are willing to wait instead of leaving the house. And
Go ahead.
well, I could keep going.
Well,
You
I was just
have
going to
cut
say,
me off.
you can tell me I'm wrong, or you can have a different opinion, but I think, like, as cell phones evolved, which we've talked about in another episode, it's like back in the 80s and even, a little bit of the 90s, we didn't have the distraction of the cell phones. So people were at home back then, and it was like after you've watched a couple shows on TV, it was kind of like, okay, what are we doing now? What are we going to do tonight? Like, what you had to like physically, actively do something to entertain yourself. Like, you couldn't just sit there and be preoccupied with the cell phone and look at internet or news or articles or movies or whatever on your phone.
Bro.
So you know what I'm saying? So like back then, it was an activity to go out and like do something because you're just like stuck at home. And
You just added a whole new layer to this that I hadn't thought of.
yeah, so I just see people at their house, even like, like mom's doing, or the people are just looking at their phones, and they're just, the TV's going, but they're looking at their phone. So they're always they always seem like they always have something to do now because of the phone.
Right. Okay.
But back then we didn't have that.
That's fair.
So you kind of had to figure out different ways to entertain yourself, and going to the movies was like a big experience. It was a fun, something else to do experience that you just didn't have.
Yeah, so maybe it's
you didn't have
another
at your fingertips.
Maybe it's another kind of fatigue. The fact that binge watching is part of our culture and it's part of our normal routines now, to like binge watch something as you work or something like that. Maybe we're just kind of fatigued at watching things, whereas before,
Could be.
it was something to do.
Right.
But now with the phone, like you said, we don't need
Right.
something quote unquote to do. That's sad.
I know. It gave you an opportunity to go out and see people.
Right.
You know, because you can't just like have FaceTime or text or anything like that back then. It was just kind of like, we got to get out of the house and go do something fun.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle.
know?
I think part of it too, at least in very recent years, has to do with Hollywood's collapse. Now, I call it Hollywood's collapse, meaning a perfect storm of a few things that happened all at once. First, there was COVID, not just COVID, you can't go anywhere, closing the movie theaters. Obviously, that had an impact, and it's hard to get people to come back after COVID just because we've gotten used to sheltering in place and not going out as much. But the celebrity part of COVID, you had these attention-seeking celebrities on social media. Remember the Imagine bullshit?
I try to forget.
Good Lord. So cringe. Just attention-seeking celebrities who suddenly couldn't work and had no outlet for their narcissistic supply needs. And so they're on social media saying, we're all in this together. Madonna from her milk bath and rose petals saying we're all in this together. Right. Right, milk bath, rose petal, Madonna.
Jeez.
We're all in this together. We're the same.
Right.
And it was just, it was so much. And then just before COVID, we had the Me Too, which Hollywood very self-righteously started and annihilated everybody, many people unfairly in their path, only to find out around the same time as COVID is happening and yada, yada. Oh, look, Harvey Weinstein turned out to be a serial rapist, and you all knew about it, and you all kept it secret, so you can go right to hell.
Right.
Okay, so Me Too exploded and then imploded as it should have.
Right.
Those just cocky, self-righteous, insufferable bastards.
I love it.
So there's that going on. COVID, celebrities acting celebrity stupid, Me Too backfiring, and then the whole idea of, in the last couple of years, go woke, go broke, where studios are purposely bending stories to the will of this woke ideology to serve an ideology instead of telling a good story or telling an authentic or true story that people can relate to. But social engineering, like purposeful social engineering to serve an ideological purpose or agenda. And I've seen on several occasions in the last couple of years, either actors or producers, directors, studio heads, I've seen more than once where people are blaming the general population or blaming the audiences for not liking their shitty movie. Mm-hmm. It's like, you didn't come to our, there was a movie about a gay couple, and he blamed us, people. It's because you're homophobic. It's like, yeah, or it's a shitty movie, like so stupid.
Testify.
Well, I'm just saying, like, Schitt's Creek has one of the most beautiful love stories in recent TV series, and it's between two men, and it's beautiful, and I cry every time, and I challenge any, quote unquote homophobic person to watch it and not feel the same. It's a love story, and they treat it like one, not like a preachy, shove it down your throat, like this or you suck. It's a beautiful, beautiful, well-written, developed story. And so I just see a lot of blaming of audiences that your movie sucks. So there's just a lot of insufferable, self-righteous crap going on that I think people are kind of turned off by Hollywood at this point. Not that we don't go see movies. Barbie was a big hit. Oppenheimer, like you said. Inside Out 2 just came out. Top Gun the year before Barbie. So it's not that we're not going to the movies. It's just, COVID changed a lot. It changed how we see celebrity. It changed how people serve. If you go to the movie right now, it doesn't matter how crowded or not crowded it is, your service will suck. It will be horrible. The kids behind the counter don't look you in the eye. They barely speak. It's hard to find help when people are just standing around. I mean, last time Mallory and I went to the movie, it was not a great experience just because the world is different.
Yeah. Pay attention, kid. I need my $6 box of Milk Duds.
Right.
They've made it almost impossible for people to afford to even go to movies.
Exactly. That's another thing, the cost. Like if you're willing to be patient for a few months and wait for it to stream, you better give me a damn good reason to leave my house and receive very poor service by a teenager, and spend way too much on a Diet Coke and popcorn and a movie. You got to give me a damn good reason.
Right.
And there just hasn't been a damn good reason.
And one might say, well, the box office number still suggests, yeah, but it cost 4 times more than it did back in 1987.
Right.
Please.
Right. So those are a lot of the factors I think that play into why the summer blockbuster era is kind of dying out. And I don't know that it's dying out for good. Maybe not, but we'll shall see.
Yeah, we'll see. I love when you talk with your hands, by the way.
I talk with my hands?
When you're super into something, like passionate about what you're getting into, you talk with your hands. It's my fave.
That is so funny that you said that, because my students used to imitate me a lot. They got a real kick out of imitating me. And one of the things that they would always do, like I'm hitting my hand with the other hand. Like, what would you call this? Like I'm chopping wood when I'm making a strong point.
Or it's like I used to work with an autistic kid, and that was stop. So like if you put the side of your hand into your palm, it's stop.
Yes, I put the side of my hand in my palm. That's one thing that I do when I'm like making points. And I do talk with my hands. I'm very animated. And my students would always imitate me. And I got such a kick out of it because I didn't notice that about myself. And it was so cute.
I was just watching your hands as you were talking. I was like, don't you point your palms at me. Don't you point your palms at me.
I do that.
You know, when I coach, this is off topic, but when I get really pissed and I'm in a huddle, because I can't like punch something or I don't want to. I don't want to kill my hand.
Or punch a kid.
Or punch a kid, because I'm not going to do that. I don't want to punch the bench. I don't want to punch my board. I'll do this when I'm mad. When I talk, I'll punch
That's what Dad does.
I'll punch my fist into my other hand.
Dad does that.
That's when I'm trying to like really get my point across. And I do it right as I say it. It's...
Zoinks.
Yeah, I know.
DNA.
I know.
That's funny.
And the funny thing is, I don't even remember Dad doing that. I just kind of did it instinctively. And the players kind of looked like they just saw a ghost. Sorry.
All right. Well, hey, let's take a quick break. When we come back, Joe and I are going to take a couple of deep dives into our 2 favorite summer blockbusters of all time.
So, stick around.
Stay tuned. All right, we're back.
We are back.
Joe,
Mary Beth.
what is your favorite summer blockbuster of all time?
I mean, never gets old. Love talking about it. Love thinking about it. Love watching it. Love rewatching it. Top Gun.
Yes, and we've actually talked a little bit about your love of this movie in an earlier
In my opinion,
episode.
the GOAT of all movies. It was released on May 12th, 1986. A gentleman by the name of Tony Scott directed it. But I didn't know that Jerry Bruckheimer, I guess I just didn't realize that he was one of the producers. But this Tony Scott director, apparently he gets the job because of the strength of a Saab commercial that he helped make. You know, Saab is the Swedish car company. Mm-hmm. And it was like right around 1980 or early 80s, might have been 83, where he had a commercial, and I don't remember it, so I don't know if they played it worldwide or whatever, but it was of a Saab version of a Saab car racing some type of Saab jet.
Ooh.
So the strength of that commercial got him the director's job.
Hey, I just heard. Do you still keep up with Office Ladies podcast?
Oh yeah, I'm current.
So you watched or listen to Phyllis?
Yeah, I'm current.
Okay. Remember when she said, "Say yes," because one job leads to another job to another job, and that's a perfect example where you take a commercial.
Probably didn't think that was going to lead to
exactly one of the highest grossing films of all time. Oh, sorry. Spoiler.
Thunder Stole. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I love that movie. You know, we've talked a little bit in another episode where Dad was in a pilot training program with the Air Force. While it was the Air Force, I still loved it because I felt like it was my dad flying those planes. And I told the audience that I had a poster of 2 naval fighter jets, you know, in my room at one point. I loved it for so many reasons. I thought Tom Cruise was perfect for that role, even though he's only like 5'7". But I thought he was great in that. The film had, you know, some mixed reviews initially, but But we know that the visual effects were stunning. The soundtrack was, I mean, unreal. Critically acclaimed, the soundtrack was. It won plenty of awards. You had Take My Breath Away by Berlin. You had, and that was super, like, it was like a great moment of the movie, you know, and just the way they set it up. But on top of that, with the music, it just made it unreal.
Yeah, the love scene was very steamy, but it was all silhouette, which made it so cool.
Right, but the pace of the scene like was perfect for the song, or maybe vice versa, or both. I mean, it wasn't like a real fast-paced scene. It was just real, you know.
It became sort of an iconic,
soft and kind of black and white-ish. It was just a really cool scene.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you could only really see their silhouettes.
Exactly. But the song was perfect for that. And then you had Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins, as we know. But what I found out was that the Danger Zone song was originally supposed to be set to record by Toto.
Oh, really?
Right, exactly. But apparently there were some legal disputes, and that sort of paved the way for Kenny Loggins to step in, and he recorded, as we know, Danger Zone and Playing with the Boys, the volleyball song. So that's the only reason he even got to do that, was because this Toto...
I don't know much about his career, but is that what put him on the map, or was he a big star before that?
Well, so if you remember, he was in the We Are the World
Yes.
songs, and that was in like 1985.
Okay.
So he was a little known before that, but maybe not as...
Like a household name.
Exactly. So, but he had that distinct voice, that, you know, that unique voice, and I just think it worked perfect. And so that's why he got to record those two.
Excellent.
And they worked out well for him.
I have to say, though, I'm a big fan of Toto. It probably would have sounded great.
Same. But yeah, that's kind of how he got involved. And, you know, overall it was, you know, obviously we know it's a big hit. The budget was around $15 million. The box office revenue was $357.3 million.
Love the dollars.
Crazy. And it was
flush with cash.
Yeah, so it ended up being the highest grossing film, of course, of that year. But it was also the highest grossing film worldwide. So it was an iconic film. It had Tom Cruise. You had Kelly McGillis, who was a little bit taller than Tom Cruise.
Is everyone.
Well, she actually I found out she had to take her shoes off for scenes with him. So anytime you see them two together.
Yeah. He's probably standing on a milk crate.
Yeah, I know she had her shoes off. But yeah, you had Val Kilmer, who ended up being a Batman at some point. Anthony Edwards, Goose, who was also in Revenge of the Nerds, and ER, right?
Yes.
Tom Skerritt, which I just think Tom Skerritt's
he can do no wrong.
Yeah, he just had that look too. You know what I mean? Like he had that mustache, he had this hair, but he just kind of looked like a military dude.
Yes.
You know,
but he had a leadership quality to him.
Exactly. And I just thought his acting was. He's one of the more, at least in that area, he was one of the more natural actors.
Yes.
Like I never felt like he was like remembering a line of a script. Like he wasn't memorizing a line. It just always everything seemed reactive the right way, and he was just so natural in what he did. And he didn't like speed through things. I just felt like he was a great actor, and he was in a lot of good stuff. But anyway, you know, we talked about the soundtrack. It went 9 times platinum.
Wow.
The soundtrack. I had the soundtrack. It was a must-have.
Yes.
You've Lost That Love and Feeling from the Righteous Brothers.
Yeah.
You had Great Balls of Fire.
Oh, yes.
You had, of course, Playing with the Boys, which all the women love the damn volleyball scene when Slider does that little flex and, you know.
Not complaining.
Guys have their shirts off and they're whatever.
Is it getting hot in here?
Yeah. And, of course, Danger Zone, Take My Breath Away. But some great songs. I had that soundtrack, and it's not a funny story, but the night that Princess Diana passed away in that accident, I got pulled over coming home from work late. It was like midnight or 11 o'clock. And I get pulled over on the expressway, and I was listening to Danger Zone in my car. So,
Mom, that was a joke. Mom, that was a joke. As you guys know, we record at our parents' house because we both have noisy dogs, and this is the quietest place to record. And so Mom heard me say, "Is it getting hot in here?" He was talking about very sexy boys on the beach playing volleyball.
Did she change the temperature?
No, I go, "Ooh, is it getting hot in here?" And I look over at Mom, and she kind of nods like, "Yeah, it is." And she gets up to go to the thermostat. I'm like, "Honey, no."
Yeah.
Aw.
So anyway, I was listening to Danger Zone in my car, and I got a speeding ticket.
Aw.
And
You were in the danger zone.
I was in the danger zone. I was feeling myself. I was like, when it clicked into that dun-dun, I was like, let me click this into fourth gear.
Yeah. Show me the runway.
Yeah, and of course, I got pulled over. I didn't have my ID with on me.
My.
And another police officer pulled up behind the guy that pulled me over, and he walked up. I heard him at my window, and he's like, "Hey, Princess Diana just died." So it was the night she died.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I remember that. So anyway, Yeah, so the soundtrack was amazing. Even the anthem, it's called Memory. So like the song with no words at the
Dun,
beginning.
dun, dun, dun,
Oh,
dun, dun.
wow, Lord! Like it just gives
You
me
like my imitation?
Yeah.
Don't I sound like a synthesizer?
Like it just gives me chills. It
Yeah.
gives me chills. And they of course they did it in the new version in 2022.
Yes.
That's kind of how they opened it. And so a lot of good memories. Speaking of memories, a lot of good memories watching that movie. And I know in 2015, which I didn't know this previously, but the Library of Congress selected the film for preservation in the National Film Registry.
Yes.
They found it quote unquote or quote culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Yes, that's the qualification. And,
And I think it made like dog tags cool, and you had the tight white T-shirts,
Bomber jackets.
bomber, the flight like the pilot jackets,
The Ray-Bans.
and the Ray-Bans. I mean, this made that stuff so cool, and he had the little crotch rocket.
It really did make that stuff cool.
Yeah, so there were so many elements to that movie. I thought this was pretty interesting. Matthew Modine, who was a big actor in the 80s, he was supposed to be Maverick. Apparently, close to last minute, he decided that the film's pro-military stance went against his politics. So he ended up doing Full Metal Jacket, which is a war film about Vietnam.
He could have had Tom Cruise money.
Right. But I do know that there was some crazy big actor names that you probably hadn't thought of that were considered for that movie. It was, or in consideration, it was like Patrick Swayze was considered.
Oh, wow.
Michael J. Fox, Ralph Macchio.
My
There were
gosh.
several. I think Sean Penn. So there were several big name actors that were considered for that role.
Okay. Ralph Macchio? No.
Absolutely not.
Michael J. Fox? No. I can see Sean Penn, but he lacks the likability that Tom Cruise has.
Like
Tom
Sean Penn
Cruise,
was a little bit more of a serious kind
Maverick
of actor.
had to be likable also,
Correct.
because you had to forgive his character for being out of control sometimes.
Right.
The people in the movie who cared about him, who looked out for him, who had his back, whether he was getting yelled at, even his superiors, it knew he had talent and wanted to preserve that talent and wanted to rein him in. So I don't think Sean Penn could have sold that likability, because you really do have to forgive those impulsive qualities of his character.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Patrick Swayze, rest in peace.
Patrick Swayze.
Not trying to make fun of the guy, but
too old.
Too old, but he didn't have the opportunity to sing or dance in that movie, so that probably wasn't going to work for him.
Yeah, but he can do the tough guy thing, which is, let's give him credit. Not many actors can pull off, a beautiful pirouette and
then go kick your ass.
and then go to Roadhouse.
Yeah, and then go roundhouse kick your ass. I'm going to roundhouse your ass. Yeah, so
I think that at the time, even at the time, he would have seemed too old. Mm-hmm. Tom Cruise had that look. They may have been the same age for all I know, but he had he had that boyish look.
Yeah, I think I read where Cruise was only like 25.
Yeah. Because they were just training, so they couldn't be that old. And Patrick Swayze did Ghost 4 years later, so yeah, he would have looked too old, I think, to be a student.
Yeah, so Cruise was about 25 or 26, because I think they started filming in 85, and I think he was born like 60 or 61, whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But they picked him based on his performance in Risky Business.
Yeah.
So I think on the female side, I think they had considered in Kelly McGillis's role, I think I had read Demi Moore, speaking of, and I think maybe Julia Roberts. It seems like she was like considered for everything back then. So there were some different even female actresses considered for that role. But it's one of those things where maybe it's just because I like the movie so much or I love it so much. It's like Kelly McGillis just kind of seems right for that part, I guess.
Well, yeah, and there are elements of that movie where you don't want the stars to overpower the story.
Right. And she kind of looked like she could be a military like instructor type. You know what I mean? Like she just kind of had that look about her.
It would have been something too sensational about it if they had gone with the beautiful Hollywood, the standard hot girl.
Exactly.
It wouldn't have sold as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think I need to get into the plot of the movie necessarily, because everybody here,
we all know,
every Gen Xers should know what that movie's about. But
fly, almost crash, fly, die.
Well, I mean,
cry.
like I said, the visual effects were amazing.
They didn't even look like visual effects.
Right. I mean, world-class visual effects. There's that element of the love story. There's the sadness with Goose dying.
The friendship between them.
Tragically, and just I thought it was very, very well done. I know a lot of people will pick movies like Forrest Gump or movies like that as their top favorite movie, but Top Gun just does it for me every time. Anytime that's a list or somebody asks me, I'm like Top Gun, and I probably watch it 2 or 3 times a year. Mm-hmm. And it never gets old. I've never watched it once and was like, yeah, I'm kind of over this. I get goosebumps and I get excited every time I watch it.
Yeah.
And the last part where him and Iceman just become friends and wingmen and they hug each other.
They respect each other.
I literally I'm getting like goosebumps
out.
Talking
You're
about it.
You're fangirling.
Yeah, I'm fangirling talking about it.
That's so cute.
Yeah. I love it. And it's just, to me, it's like Dad was in the military. And I feel proud watching that movie. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I was there with them. And I don't know, there's just, you kind of have just an immense pride, I guess, watching that movie.
Here's something that I think is really cool. It makes Top Gun even more of a standout amongst summer blockbusters. You had all kinds of series or franchise on the list. Like we've mentioned, Star Wars, several of those, a couple Jurassics. You had, several Batman, several Marvels. Mm-hmm. So Top Gun is the only movie on that list twice. And not just like 2 years after the first one, so we can capitalize on the interest and the fame and the hype.
Yeah, no, try almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years later on a movie that
36 years.
I can't do fast math.
Okay, sorry. It's 86 to 20. Yeah, so almost 40 years.
Okay, so it was almost the top in 2022. It would have been sooner, but COVID hit.
Right. Yeah, so, almost 40 years. That's crazy.
So a lot of these franchise movies were capitalizing on the momentum of the previous movie, right? Mm-hmm. So Top Gun, no, we're talking decades later in a sort of a world that didn't have a part 2. It was just, you know what? Let's do a part 2. Let's write a part 2. Because in all these like superhero movies, you can rely on comic books and the stories are already sort of written. Top Gun was fresh and you cannot pull that off easily. Mm-hmm. But they wrote a beautiful, nostalgic script that had all the same things we loved about the first one, but it was a new, fresh class. It had a lot of the same cinematography, action, suspense, danger. Tom Cruise still looked cute as ever.
He could pull it off at that age.
And it just, to me, felt like a winner. In what they attempted, it's almost impossible to give us a banger, and they did.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I loved
Decades
it.
later.
Yeah,
so to see Top Gun twice on the list, that far apart, when there is no part 2 to that story, and they created a new one, but made it new and fresh, but also the same in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I thought they honored the original perfectly.
I do too.
I never felt like they overdid it.
I didn't feel like I was missing anything.
Yeah. And they plugged the music in. I just thought they honored it really well and they didn't overdo it.
Yeah, it was. That's a great one.
A couple last things on Top Gun, and we can get to yours, but I would be willing to bet without looking at the data that military recruitments went up.
I would imagine.
Top Gun, because people are like, let's go. I want to do that.
I want to be Maverick.
Yeah, so like it made me want to try. Obviously, I didn't, but it made me at the time want to do that. And I think it was cool, honestly, as a guy. This may sound bad, but I thought it was cool. Like that movie kind of taught me like how to be a dude.
How to be a dude.
Yeah, I mean, those were bad mother effers.
Yes, they were.
I mean, they were dudes.
They were men's men.
Men's masculine dudes that were getting out there, putting themselves in harm's way. I just remember as a young kid thinking, man, those guys are tough.
Those are men.
Those are bad dudes, man.
Yeah.
So that's kind of was my entrance into learning how to be a dude.
Yeah. What does it look like to be a dude? And not just a dude, but a cool dude.
Yeah, and not toxic masculinity.
No,
but just
masculinity.
These are guys that aren't afraid, will face the enemy literally upside down and give them the finger. But then you kind of heard how they talked to each other and they were, caring of women, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so anyway, I just thought it was like my first lesson in how to be an actual dude's dude, a man's man.
It was my first lesson in just how sexy men could be.
Well, there you go.
Ha-cha-cha.
There you go. You have your angle, I have mine. But that's I just distinctly remember. I was like, that's how I think my dad was.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that, like watching them, throughout each scene. I'm like, that's how my dad had to be in the Air Force. My dad's a man's man. My dad's a dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's what that made me feel like when I watched that movie.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
Are you ready for mine? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so excited.
I think.
I'm talking
gonna get
about.
Scared. I'm gonna get scared.
You should.
I know. I'm still scared.
Dunna.
Dunna.
Dunna, dunna, dunna. I am going with Jaws, obviously. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like you, I can watch this movie several times a year. It never gets old. It never becomes less scary, even though I know what's happening or what's going to happen. I love this movie for so many reasons. Not only have I had a lifelong fascination with sharks, but I saw this movie as a little kid and was terrified and fascinated all at once. And if there's an ocean documentary or a shark documentary, I'm on it. I feel like I've run out of them to watch. Shark Week is coming up. The best time of the year.
Dad, what are you doing at Shark Week? Have you ever seen Step Brothers? Every time I hear
Yes.
Shark Week, that's what I think of.
Shark Week, July 7th on Discovery.
What?
And a week before that, on the 30th, you have National Geographic, a month-long Shark Fest. It's going to be a month of Shark Jubilee.
It's like the TV version of Summer Blockbusters. Okay.
Shark Spectacular.
Okay.
Okay. This, like we said at the beginning, this was the movie that started it all. It's crazy to think what it took to pull this movie off. While it was backed by Universal Studio, it had the money, it had the support and the resources, but all the odds were stacked against this movie. First of all, let's start with the story itself. It's based on the novel Jaws by Peter Benchley. That came out early 1974. It was an instant bestseller, and it was on the top of the list for like 44 weeks. It's almost a year.
That is almost a year. So you're good at math.
I am, yeah. So that book was so popular, and they were already discussing, making it into a screenplay. Peter Benchley wrote the novel, and he also wrote the screenplay. However, the script went through so many different drafts, and Peter Benchley himself reached out to Spielberg and other writers saying, because he just reached a point where he just got stuck, which I can understand. If it's your own story, it's hard to, visual storytelling is an entirely different thing. And there are things that you can and should cut out, things you can and should take liberty with and add. So anyway, the script was never complete. And in fact, on shooting, during their shooting schedule on Martha's Vineyard, most nights, every night, all the actors and crew, they'd go party, right, on the island, while Spielberg and Gottlieb and the main cast members were in his cabin writing the script or perfecting or refining or changing something about the script for the next day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was just like one day to the next, that script kept evolving. And so that was one challenge. The script was never complete, and it was very much a perfect it as we go based on circumstances or what the story called for. Yeah.
That's so interesting, and I hate to cut you off.
Oh, please.
But it's so interesting that you said that about Jaws, because I forgot to mention this on Top Gun, but the first draft of the script, they didn't like.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Bruckheimer and them, they did not like it at all. So that's interesting you say that. They did not like it. And even Val Kilmer almost didn't want to do the movie because he thought it was silly. He thought the script was silly. So they had to redo it quite a bit, too. So they said that the final version of that
Let me
film-
guess. The reason that people didn't like it, there wasn't enough heart.
I don't. Maybe.
I
don't
bet. I bet it hadn't.
Probably, but anyway, the point of that is like it kind of similar to what you're saying, and
Well-
the final version of that film was quite different than the first draft. So go ahead. But
The real challenge as far as the script, I mean, Spielberg read the original script and said, if the current director drops out or something, let me know, I want to do this. And that's what ended up happening. And so, but he still faced this challenge where, okay, we've got this big monster, but how are we going to, because no one had ever done a movie about a killer shark.
right.
All right. How are we going to sell this without it being campy? It can't be like a bloody, gory slasher type thriller movie. It's got to, we've got to care about these people. And so he was always focused on the characters and their story and what motivated them. And there was enough fear in the story to drive the action and all that. He's like, so he was always concerned with that. And that's why they were always fine tuning things.
That's cool.
They were always trying to dig deeper and deeper. Anyway, so they had a super, super tight shooting schedule of only 2 months on Martha's Vineyard, and that was for a couple of reasons. First of all, the Screen Actors Guild had been, I guess leading up to the filming, had been threatening a strike, in which case all productions in all movies would have to stop. So they were trying to hurry up and get theirs done before that happened, if it did happen. Also, they didn't want to miss out on the momentum of the book. So in 1974, this book is hot, hot, hot. We're making the movie, and we got to release it before people lose interest or forget all about it. So there was a very quick turnaround from actual publication of this novel to the film itself. Okay, Steven Spielberg. He was not an unknown in the industry, but he'd only done like TV, a made-for-TV movie, and then one movie in theaters. And he was only 26. 26.
Wow.
But because of the movie he had done the year before, Universal gave him a 7-film contract. Okay,
That's hard to
so
believe.
he's like a kid.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, so he's like a kid being handed this big responsibility. Obviously, I think people know it stars Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw as Quint, and Roy Scheider as Chief Brody. I found it very interesting. First of all, what's his name? Dreyfuss didn't want to do it, but he and Spielberg were friends and had worked together because Dreyfuss knew it was going to be a bitch to film. He's like, I don't want to be stuck on a boat. I don't want to be on the water. He knew it was going to be a nightmare and kept avoiding it. But Spielberg talked him into it. Robert Shaw was a classically trained British actor, incredibly acclaimed, Oscar-nominated, Shakespeare dude, okay? And that's where some of the friction between he and Dreyfuss sort of came from. Dreyfuss talks about really admiring him, really respecting him, but also hating him, loving and hating him, which really plays out well for their characters in the movie.
So you're talking like real life.
In real life, during filming.
Okay.
And Robert knew how to push his buttons, and he also didn't like all his whining and complaining. He's like, you have no idea. Like he's a real, first of all, he's a man's man, and he's also classically trained. Like, you little Hollywood shit, quit complaining and stuff like that. But he really did admire him, he said. Roy Scheider actually almost didn't play this part. Spielberg was having a really tough time casting this role, and it was so important to him because he said that Chief Brody had to be the audience. In other words, the audience needed to live through this character in particular. He's the lead, he's our hero, main hero, alongside these other two. But we need to relate to him. We need to respect his authority, his position as a chief of police, but also relate to his inexperience as just a regular guy who, I'm not a sailor, I'm just a retired police officer on this island. And so Charlton Heston wanted that role really badly.
Did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. That's crazy to me. He really wanted the role, but Spielberg said, I can't, he's too big a star. And I need someone who is, if it were Charlton Heston as Chief Brody, like, he would have punched Jaws in the face in the first scene and it'd be over. Right. Like, he's just that kind of character, that kind of man, that kind of stature, that kind of hero. And so he was looking for a more relatable everyman. And he actually was approached by Roy Scheider at a Hollywood party because he was sitting alone, and he comes up to him and he's like, how about yourself over here? Is everything all right? He sits down with them and he's like, I knew him from the film industry, but I'd never met him. So he's a perfect stranger, and I'm sitting here pouring my heart out about not being able to cast this role. And when I was done venting, he was like, I'll do it. He's like, look, I'm an actor, you know. So that's how he ended up getting the role.
Wow.
Anyway, so yeah, it was the first movie to ever be shot in the open ocean, which poses so many challenges.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of big studios would, shoot on a smaller lake. They would create a huge tank.
Yeah, like an ocean
But
effect.
Spielberg insisted, again, he didn't want the stars to be too big. He wanted authenticity more than anything else because he knew that's the best way to sell it, the best way to capture people. And so you couldn't put the camera on a tripod because then the audience would get seasick. Had to be handheld, but you're on this little boat. So it was just a kind of a logistic nightmare of filming. And then on top of that, you had the fact that the shark never worked. The mechanical shark.
Oh, really?
They named him Bruce. Bruce the shark kept breaking. And so every time they were trying to film a scene with the shark, you'd hear on the intercom, the shark is broken. Fix the shark. The shark is not working.
I had no idea.
Okay, so that happened all throughout the movie. And so Spielberg had to come up with new and inventive ways to still keep filming because every day that was lost, he went triple the time over on filming. He went double over on budget. So he was just under a lot of pressure and had to keep getting the scene, getting the shot, even without the shark. So do you know where I'm going with this?
Tell me.
Well, what's the real appeal behind this type of filmmaking? This was a new kind of thing, Jaws. It wasn't your typical, like I said, blood and guts and gore. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't your typical monster movie because you never see it. You don't see the shark until an hour and 2 minutes into the movie. It's a 2-hour movie.
Really?
Dude, when you think about it.
It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Okay. Well, think of the opening sequence. It opens with the girl around the campfire. The boy's chasing her. Where are you going? Swimming!
Right.
And so she takes off all her clothes and then runs into the water. She's floating, and what do we see? We hear the music, that John Williams score. It's just 2 notes. We see her legs underwater. Then we see her above water, and then she's yanked down. She comes up, and her voice is shaken, and then she starts screaming. Mm-hmm. We see her being thrashed around, and we see her being pulled under. He created a whole different type of thriller where what you can't see is more terrifying than anything he could possibly show you. So with Williams' score, which won the Oscar, and his inventive use of that lens made film history and inspired so many filmmakers of our age.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Never even heard that.
You never even thought of that.
Never thought of it.
Because you think the movie's so scary
Right.
that you think the shark is all throughout.
Right. Yeah.
But he's not.
Yeah.
In fact, you don't even get 62 minutes in is when you first see the shark with that little boy on the raft. Mm-hmm. You just kind of get a glimpse of the fins turning over in the water as the blood bursts out of the water.
Right.
But then it's not until they're on the Orca, the 3 of them, where Roy Scheider is putting the bait out. He's shoveling the bait out into the water. Mm-hmm. And then in the back of the frame, you see clearly the shark come out of the water. Mm-hmm. And then boom, you see him straighten up, and that's when he backs up and says, "You're going to need a bigger boat."
I need to watch it again.
Dude.
Yeah, so a lot of those shots underwater and stuff when you're seeing the people's legs and stuff, it's almost like you're seeing it from the shark's perspective.
Yeah, and think about exactly. Think about the music. It's 2 notes, but it builds and Spielberg was very underwhelmed when John Williams first just played it on the piano, not with the orchestration behind it, right? But he's like, "That's it?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, trust me." Because when you think of those notes and how it paces and moves, the music itself is the monster chasing you. The music is chasing you. Mm-hmm. Something's coming to get you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so when you pair that, and then the other magic ingredient, Spielberg always knew, was the audience's imagination. He knew that our primal instincts and our primal core was that fear of the unknown and fear of what you can't see. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we create monsters in our heads that aren't there, and sometimes we make things worse than they are. But imagining, like in that opening sequence, it was more horrifying to imagine what was being done to her under the surface than it was to see anything.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so he was relying on audience imagination and the music and the creative shots to make that happen. So his brilliance made that movie what it is. And I have so much respect for him making the best out of a terrible situation, because he was positive every single day when he went to his cabin that he was going to be fired.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I'm looking at my notes here to see if there's anything. Oh, okay. So let's talk about the hype leading up to it. So this was the first time that a movie studio paired the merchandising and the marketing just to build the buzz. And that really wasn't done before then. So maybe they were afraid they'd lose money. It cost $9 million to make it, which was triple or double the budget. But it ended up winning Oscar. It won many awards, but it won the Oscar for Best Editing, which Spielberg also did with the help of another lady. Gosh. Best Sound and Best Musical Score. Cost $9 million. How much do you think it grossed at the box office?
In 75, $100 million.
$476.5 million in 1975.
That's it?
Look.
That's it?
Look.
You're kidding me.
If you factor in inflation, that'd be $2 billion right now.
I was going to say, like, Top Gun was $357.
Yeah.
In 86.
Yeah. Well, this is since, I mean, but I think the number was like 300 something in 75, which was huge. But $476.5 million that movie has made. That's just the first one. And if you think about it, counting for inflation, it'd be about $2 billion now, which would still put this movie in the top 5 or 10 of highest grossing films. And Spielberg is actually, I think he still holds the record for the most commercially successful director of all time.
That dude was a genius.
He is brilliant.
Age.
At that age, 26 years old, only coming up with these new ideas for filming out of necessity, because they're fighting weather, they're fighting wind, they're fighting current, they're fighting tide, they're fighting sunrise and sunset. Actually, this was before digital editing, so if a sailboat went by in the background,
they just went by in the background.
they had to wait. No, they had to wait.
Oh, they had to wait.
Yeah, and if they were, by the time one boat would clear the frame, 2 more would come. And then by the time it's time to get their shot, the current's been so strong that they've moved. The sun's in a different spot. I mean, it was just a nightmare for so many of those reasons.
And didn't you say they only took 2 months to film?
Yes, but he went over almost triple. They started May 1st. They were supposed to finish at the end of June, and I think they went into July or whatever.
Oh, I see.
So they went, they went over budget. They went over time.
Gotcha.
And in fact, when the last shot was prepared, that's where the shark blows up. Mm-hmm. Well, they only had one shark head. They had to get it right. So Spielberg got everything set up, got on a plane, left, let his DP do it. And so Dreyfuss is on the plane with him. He's like, so how'd the final shot go? And Spielberg was like, it's happening right now. And he's like, you're not there? He's like, no. He was sure they were going to throw him in the water or something like that, and he doesn't like the water.
Oh, I gotcha.
So actually that became a tradition. So Spielberg now, ever since, is never on set for the final shot of his movies.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Yeah. So I just think it's cool. It certainly began the modern era of the summer blockbuster that studios still try to capitalize upon today, 50 years later.
Yep. It is a cultural phenomenon for sure.
And there's so much more I could say about this movie. The making of it is so interesting. I'd encourage anybody to go look on YouTube. You can find a few fascinating. There's so much to the story.
When I was 10 years old and we had a pool, I may or may not have been scared when the pool light was off at night. When I was swimming, I was like, there might be a shark in here. Jaws might be in here.
Yeah, and that's one of the hallmarks of the summer blockbuster. It's when it's more than just a movie, it's an event, and it also becomes part of the culture. Mm-hmm. So you could be in a pool and look over at somebody and go, dun, dun, and they know, right, and people know what you mean. Yeah. Just like Top Gun. You know, if you wore a bomber jacket and the aviators, people would go, ooh, Maverick or ooh, Top Gun or something like that. Yeah. So these movies, they have a quality about them that...
Or people talk about their wingman all the time.
Right. Yeah. They have a way of sort of tangling themselves into our lives and our consciousness.
But they stick.
That's what I mean.
They've got extreme staying power.
That's what I mean. They like... Yeah. They're imprinted on our hearts, our minds, our memories. And... that's why I think they're important, and I hope that they don't go away. They seem to be fading.
You think so?
I mean, the last few years, but
you're talking about summer blockbusters in general.
Yeah. Because I think
I thought you meant those two movies. Like,
no,
child.
No, not those, babe.
I got you.
No, I just mean the summer blockbuster phenomenon. It may be a thing of the past, but I'm just glad that we lived in the golden era.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
Of that time.
It seemed like everything was leading up to July 4th, and it just, I don't know.
I know,
awesome.
Right?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Oh, well, thank you so much for listening to another piece of the Gen X experience worth saving. The summer blockbuster era might soon be a thing of the past, but it's now at least immortalized in the annals of history. If you like what you heard, subscribe to the Best of Gen X wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Joe, always a pleasure.
Duh.